Welcome to the Speak Like a Leader podcast with John Bates. Welcome to the show. With me today, I have Gerardo Segat. He is an international leadership coach and host of the live show Out as Humans, which is a performing arts show about leadership for organizations and conventions that humanizes leaders and leadership. And so you can probably tell why I'm excited to have him on the show. You can find him at gerardosegat.com, GerardoSegat.com. And then if you want to find out about the show, just put /show, and you can find out about Out as Humans. So Gerardo, thanks for joining us. You're in Switzerland. So I appreciate you coming all this distance electronically to join me. Thanks for being here.
Thank you, John, for having me. It's not that distant.
No, yeah, it's pretty interesting, right? Place has taken a different meaning on now in the post-COVID world. So, or maybe not totally post-COVID, but you know what I mean. So tell us a little bit about you and your leadership journey, because I know that you've worn a lot of hats, you've had a lot of positions. Give us a little bit of your history, and then I would love to talk about Out as Humans and leadership and all the things that we're going to talk about. But tell us a little bit about you and your journey first.
Yeah, I worked for 20 years in the family office industry. Obviously, I started as an employee, then became a director of one of the major multi-family offices based in London. And then, I started my own business as an entrepreneur. At the age of 29, just myself and an assistant in a small service office in London. And then, that small business became a 400 people operation with 10 offices around the world, multi-family office, different kind of services, asset management, trust, etc., legal. And then 2016, I exited my business. I requalified as a coach with the ICF and started my new career as a leadership coach with the purpose of humanizing leaders and organizations.
Yeah.
And over the past decade, I've been a member of an organization called YPO, Young Presidents Organization, which is the world's largest community of CEOs, 35,000, I believe, in 140 countries.
Yes.
I chaired and founded chapters in Switzerland, in Italy, and globally for YPO. And then, just recently, I started this new project about the show, Out as Humans. So I kind of requalified again, if you want, because I actually hired an acting coach to become an actor.
That's great.
And so I kind of, throughout my professional life, I was an employee, director, chairman, CEO, an entrepreneur, a coach, and now a show host.
Yeah. Well, so I think it's really interesting that out of all of that experience, what you have come to at this point in your life is Out as Humans. And I've got to believe that one of the things that you saw that was important, and maybe something that you saw that was missing, was authenticity and humanity at work. When you had this company where you had 400 people in multiple countries, I've got to imagine that one of the things that you did was to be authentic and be out as a human. And probably you noticed that when you were doing that, it worked better. And when you weren't doing that, it didn't work as well. So I'd love to hear a little bit about the journey that took you to wanting to do this.
Well, I'd say that at the beginning, when I decided to change from the family office business to coaching business, it was really because I was feeling the need to have more human content in my profession.
Yeah.
So probably you could say to actually feel more human, if you want.
Yeah.
And then once I started the career as a coach, that evolved into wanting to other people to feel more human. I
Yeah.
wanted to do something to make other people feel more human, especially those people that I was, if you want. So, Leaders, Out as Humans is a show that is specifically for leaders.
Yeah.
So, it is featured C-level for corporates, leadership associations, convention, and organization, and it is to lift authenticity and humanity of leaders. So it is something that has evolved first within myself, and then once, for me, coaching was also a way to express my humanity and my authenticity, and then it evolved into out as first the coaching, and then Out as Humans to take the show worldwide.
Yeah. That's very exciting. So tell me a little bit go a little more in depth on what you mean when you say authenticity and humanity, bringing that to leaders.
I mean specifically to allow people to take the mask off and be their true self. Very, very simple. Leadership is one of the, the world is like this, if you want. And every human being has fears and as a white side and a black side, let's say, and we, I think instinctively like to show the white one and not the black, if you want. This is particularly true in the leadership environment, and it is more true the more we grow up in the ladder of leaders, the more it's true. The more it's seen. So it is really to crack this down, and that what I'm doing now and the purpose of the show is really to allow leaders to be in a safe space, to experience what it means sharing vulnerabilities, showing fragilities, and etc., and being authentic. So show also their fragilities, and to experience it and see how it feels and how it makes them feel.
Yeah. So I love that, and I think that one of the things that we connected on, Gerardo, is that I think we're both trying to do similar things in bringing authenticity and humanity to leadership and encouraging leaders, especially high-level leaders, to really go ahead and be vulnerable and be human and to bring that to work. What do you say to people when they say, well, how do I know when I'm being too vulnerable?
Well, I'll be honest with you. I never experienced a situation where people feel that they are too vulnerable. I mean, I have situations where different people are in different ways inclined to open up. Okay.
Yeah.
And some it's easier for some people. It's easier for some people. Is more difficult.
Yeah.
And that's okay. There's nothing wrong. There's nothing wrong with it. I think the important is, graduality. I see quite a lot. But what is important is the willingness to do it once there is the willingness to do it, even if you start with just first step or a small gesture, then it will build up, especially because humanity, authenticity, human connection, deep authenticity are extremely contagious.
Yeah.
And so, it is just enough if there is 1, 2 people just, being authentic, vulnerable, and then that will go to the other people, and the other people more and more will be more vulnerable and authentic.
Yeah, I find the same thing. I think that we are very inclined to mirror each other because we've got mirror neurons. And so when someone goes first and they're authentic and they're vulnerable and they get really real, everybody else, I really think, tell me what you think about this, but I really think that we all want to be that much more than we are. I think people really appreciate it when other people are authentic and vulnerable, and everybody wants to be that way, but they never know whether it's going to be safe here to do that. So when someone else is willing to go first, I think people are very willing to go second and third and fourth, and people love that. But it takes that leader to go first and set the tone.
Yes, I completely agree with you. People are actually craving to find themselves into situations where they can be themselves. Okay, that's at all levels, leader included. I will give you an example just of this. One of the things I do, as a coach, now I have the show. And what I also do is I've created this corporate coaching program. And one of the experiences is a speech that I give to boards of corporates about vulnerability. And that speech is half an hour, talks about the effect on performance, on your performance, on performance of the people. What are the effects of vulnerability, and the other half an hour is actually an exercise where I share my most intimate fragility, and I ask people to do that. And I was recently in London doing this for the board of one of the major Swiss banks, before the meeting, there was no connection. People were coming in the room without even saying hello to me.
Yeah.
And after half an hour, people shared, the most intimate fragility, ended up crying, hugging each other. The CEO writing me a message 2 days after to say, we will change things in the company to make people, feel free to open up and be who they are. So it's not only contagious, but the reality is that it is accessible. Okay, we tend to feel to think it's not in fact not ourselves, our mind, which is very protective, tends to convince us that it's impossible, it's difficult, it's hard, etc. Simply because the mind doesn't like change and likes to protect us. The reality is that if we find ourselves in a situation where people behave in that way and lead by example, then other people will open up naturally.
Yeah, I totally agree. I it's a very important part of my training as well to bring out that humanity and that authenticity. So, you've now made me curious about what is it that you talk about, and I would, if you don't want to talk about what you talk about in that talk, I would love to know of, any one of your stories of where you were in a difficult moment with your career where you were ready to give up, but you didn't. And what did you learn from that experience?
Oh, well, what I can share with you what the intimate fragility that I share with the audience in those speeches, but which is the same as the one I shared during the show. Okay, because in the show there are moments of interaction. So one is sharing the fragility. There is also exchanging apologies within the audience. There is sharing dreams. There are various moments of interaction. But the episode that I will share this to you. Then, if you want to know the most difficult thing in my profession, that's a separate thing. I lost my parents when my dad when I was 6 and my mom when I was 15. So I ended up living by myself with my older brother when I was 15. So at the time I was living in Milan, and my parents, the grave of my parents is in a cemetery in Milan. So what I share during those events is that during the night, sometimes I was like scared of the dark and feeling lonely. So I would, just wake up, take my clothes and sneak away from my sleepy brother. And I would actually, during the night, walk towards the cemetery, climb the gate, because there's a gate, and walk and go towards the grave. And when I was there, I would, just sit. There is a statue about our family with my dad, my mom, and myself, and my brother and my sister. And I would, just simply sit on that and have my head down and fall asleep, with them then when I was a kid.
God, that is heart-wrenching. And it's real and it is human. And I think one of the beautiful things about when we have the courage to share these stories is that we start to get that no matter who that other human being over there is, no matter how, look at all the things that you've done and look at all the money you've made and all the status that you've created and all those things in your life that would make it seem like, oh, I'm not like you. But no, we're all the same. Like we all have those heartbreaks and those difficult moments. And I think that we're programmed not to think about that part, right? We're like, when I met Richard Branson and hung out with Richard Branson, I thought, gosh, he's got something I don't have. He's better than I am. But then he told us all about how he had dyslexia and he had other learning disabilities that made it very difficult for him. And that's, ultimately, I think that's why he's the billionaire, because he wasn't good at doing things. So he had to hire people who were good at doing things to help him. And that's how he succeeded, is by giving other people the chance to really be excellent at what they did. But it's just so important, I think. And it makes any group that you're a part of, whether it's at work or anywhere else, it just makes it so much more cohesive, and it makes it so much better to be in that group when you know these things about each other, right?
Yes. I think, there are several effects, cohesion. It also, if you're thinking about an organization, it also affects a sense of belonging, which is very, very important. And another very important thing is trust, People who open up, they automatically create immediately, a very strong trust, which then impacts very much performance. But I completely share what you just said. I also had in my professional life experiences of world leaders, even prime minister in Italy, etc. That if you are human, they would again open up as a human being. And I found myself into situations where, prime minister were asking me what they were supposed to do to finalize a certain deal, and simply because they were lost, simply because they didn't know where to go. And it was something that maybe it was a decision that really affected their heart. And then whenever it is like this, magical things happen, it has an impact on spotting win-win scenarios, for example,
right.
In two situations, when you are like this, you are much more capable of spotting what is the win-win solution, the win-win way forward. It makes you, turn impossible to possible. That's another situation. It just makes, magical things happen.
Yeah. Well, now, but I think that if, tell me if you notice this, but it sure seems to me like maybe this is changing a little bit now these days. I think more and more people are getting more conscious, but there are still many people, I think, in business who think that any sign of weakness, or as a leader, I can't show any sign of weakness. I can't be vulnerable. I can't let people in. I've got to, keep this wall of I'm a tough leader up. What would you say to those people?
Well, number one, I would say that if they think the same when they go to bed and they are with themselves, okay.
Yeah.
The problem there is that the leader being inside every leader, the human being inside every leader is often left at home.
Yeah.
You wake up, do your stuff, and once you get out of the door, you forget your human being at home, and then you re-meet your human being when you go to bed.
Yeah.
So the story is full of leaders who somehow found themselves, even at the very last moment, just before dying, and regrets, full of regrets and resentments, because they didn't express who they were. They didn't walk the path that has been created for you as a person, for the person that you are. So also look at that case, and I would say to them, I have I've been fortunate enough to be able to join this organization, YPO.
Yeah.
YPO is the world's largest community of CEOs. Okay.
Yeah.
In YPO, the first reason for membership of globally, worldwide,
right,
from members is something that they call forum. Forum is a format of monthly meeting where 8-9 CEOs meet and share updates about their personal and professional life in a very open, vulnerable way, focusing with strong focus on emotions, talking about emotions related to facts. Okay, so this is a message that I can spread. The world's number one leadership organization. The number one value from members is a format of meeting where people share vulnerabilities, where people share in a very human way.
Yeah. So let's say that someone's listening and they maybe aren't the most vulnerable, open leader right this very minute. What would be your advice to them on how they could baby step their way into this? What would you say about that?
Well, I think, there are several things that one can do, but I'd say that one of the useful things can be to start setting yourself some inner objectives, some inner development goals, instead of, always wanting external kind of objectives. Yeah. So, more money, this, the house, the car, etc., this kind of thing. Start having objectives that are related to your inner development. I give an example. So if you have as an objective inner meaning, and you want to find inner meaning, then probably the decisions you take, what you do, is different. Okay, so starting yourself, start setting inner objectives. What you can also do is add some emotional goals to certain events. So think about, a very important meeting that you're going to have, and ask yourself how you would want to feel at the end of that meeting. So have some emotional goals too. That's also something that, this gradually makes people speak in our human language, speak about emotions. Okay, be aware of emotions, have some inner objectives, and it takes them to check in with themselves. Okay, and that gradually evolves into building self-awareness, being more aware of yourself, of your feelings, your thoughts, and therefore, opening up more.
Yeah. Well, I like how you say it. Leaders can move from a state of harmful defensive behaviors, which is, I think, what comes from being worried and scared about being vulnerable and not wanting to be vulnerable, into a state of courage and fulfillment. And I think those are two super important words. Like, courage does not mean lack of fear. Courage means that you have fear, but you do it anyway, right? And then fulfillment is something that I think is a really important goal that a lot of times people miss until either they're, a lot of time has passed, or maybe it's too late, but I think fulfillment is an enormously important part of any true definition of success. And I don't think that when you're being defensive and leaving your human at home, I don't think it gets fulfilling very quickly to do that,
No, and, if you set yourself, as an objective inner fulfillment, then you're going to have to do something about expressing your full self. Because if you want to feel fulfilled, it's impossible to feel fulfilled and not be your true self. You need to be your full true self to feel fulfilled. And the other thing, something that somehow is an obstacle also, is that people tend to think, obviously these harmful defensive behaviors, which, they go from having a loud conversation in the office to pressing a button to launch a missile. They are exactly the same thing. These are harmful behaviors that come from fears. Yes. People have fears, and therefore they behave in a harmful manner. Wearing masks, judging, postponing, destroying, delaying, ignoring, blaming. All these are harmful behaviors from fears. I don't know. I mean, first of all, it's important to actually become aware of this, and not necessarily feel. People tend to think that they are their mind, and not that they have a mind. Their thoughts, their emotion. That there is no detachment between the person and the thoughts, emotions. Okay.
Yes.
So it's all together, and therefore, so I'm fearful. No,
Yeah.
I'm not fearful. I have fears.
Yes.
There's the human being and there are fears, okay?
Yes.
And, fears are there. Yes, you are aware. That's why awareness is very important to build it
Yes.
as a skill. You are aware that you have a fear, but you can decide differently, okay?
Yeah.
And you can decide, and this is where courage comes from. Yes, there is a fear, but I decide to do in a different way.
Yes. I love that. And I'll give you a personal example that's similar, because I love this concept. I remember when I lost my .com company, that I was one of 4 co-founders, and I was the face of the company. I was the one everybody knew as the face of the company. And in October of 2000, we went out of business. Our investors, after investing over $80 million in us, pulled the plug because they said we weren't going to be profitable fast enough and the markets had turned. And so they were just going to pull the plug. And I was so devastated. And I was so, there's a whole other story there, but I was just so blocked and in such a horrible place for a really long time. And then finally, one day it dawned on me that I was not a failure. I had a failure. Does that make sense? So, and when I thought that I had a failure, all of a sudden that failure did not have me anymore, right? Because I was thinking of myself as a failure, and one of my coaches finally got me to see, John, you're not a failure. You have a failure. And I was just like, oh my gosh, wow. And that really made an enormous difference for me. And it actually, I remember in Glee class, when I was singing in a chorus, our teacher would always say, okay, kids, here we go. We're going to go perform. So if you're going to make a mistake, just make sure you make it loud, because everybody would be so scared of making a mistake, they wouldn't want to sing at all. And I realized that I actually had a pretty loud mistake there when we lost that company. And so, at least I was singing full out, right? But that idea of you're not that thing, you have that thing. Right? You're not a failure. You have a failure. You're not afraid. You have fear. Yes. I think that's a really important distinction.
Imagine how, it even applies to pain. We say I'm in pain, but the reality is I have a pain.
Yeah.
And somehow the pain, simply because it is in the leg, there is a little bit of distance, no? But because it's in the leg. If it is here, then somehow we think it's part of us. But the reality is, it can be here, there. We have to learn to build distance from thoughts, pains, fears, and all of that.
Yeah.
Once you build it, then you build awareness, then you give yourself the possibility to accept it peacefully. Yeah. And therefore, this opens up doors for, analyzing, doing it differently, remedying, all these nice things.
Yeah. Yeah. I think it's a fundamental tenet of mindfulness, right? Getting that separation, just noticing that there is some separation between all of those thoughts and all of those feelings and everything and who you actually are. Gerardo, I remember when it dawned on me in the English language that we call ourselves human beings, but we never think of ourselves that way. We treat ourselves like we're human havings or human doings or whatever. I was never really taught to manage myself as a way of being, but I think that that's a really powerful realization, is that we are human beings, and it really is a lot about who we're being and what kind of a leader do you want to be, because who you're being is what's going to give your actions, right?
Yes, I totally agree with you. And what I see is that somehow people build this kind of protective thoughts that have different shapes, no? Like,
Yes.
For example, I'm too old for that, or
Yeah.
something like, oh, look, I can be rich, or can reach having a nice house or a fantastic car, even if I'm not, my true self and
Yeah.
completely authentic. Huh?
Yeah.
Which is true. It's not, it's true.
Yeah.
On the other hand, I think the point here is how you're going to end up. It's a pity, I think, to at a certain point in time in your life, even just before, if you want, dying, feeling regrets, feeling resentments or regrets.
Yeah.
I don't think we should. I think we should do everything in order to avoid finding ourselves into that kind of situation. And there is only one way to avoid that, and it is by being the true self. And the other point I'd say is, instead of concentrating on what you can have without being yourself, your true self, concentrate on what you can have by being your true self.
Yes.
Because that's that's the real point, I think.
Yeah, way more fulfilling, I think. And you probably end up with much better things ultimately that way than you would the other.
Look, in my show, during my show, there is a moment where I ask people to write apology notes, to identify a person in the audience and write an apology note. And then at the end of the show, I say, I ask people to exchange those apology notes just at the end of the show, after the show.
Yeah.
And what you see there, apology is an expression of your human side, okay?
Yeah.
You see people remedying, relationship, one-to-one relationship, just completely in a second changing, okay?
Yeah.
And that's, to me, is amazing. It always
amazing.
gives me goosebumps,
That's
but it's a simple thing. It's a simple thing.
Yes. Yeah. Once you do it, but I don't think it seems like a simple thing till you do it, It seems so impossible for people till they get into a space like what you create with your show. So Gerardo, sorry, go ahead.
No, please.
Oh, so we only have a few minutes left. I promised I'd get you out of here by the top of the hour, but I wanted to ask you what you think is the one leadership skill that will make a difference in the age of AI.
Well, I think coming back to the point, to the discussion we've had, I think it is self-awareness.
Yeah.
Self-awareness is the leadership skill of the future. Not only it gives you the freedom to decide different and being independent from fears, from pains, from emotions, from etc. But I say self-awareness also because there is a funny story about a friend of mine who cleverly asked recently ChatGPT what would be the kind of intelligences, human intelligences, that would be the least likely for AI to surpass humans. And the answer from ChatGPT has been 5 intelligences. So 5 unbeatable human intelligences. And so one is bodily kinesthetic intelligence, naturalistic intelligence, existential, interpersonal, and intrapersonal. Okay.
Wow.
Those are the 5 given by ChatGPT to my friend. Now, all of that, if you read the definition given by ChatGPT, have the word awareness.
Yeah.
Okay, so awareness of the body, awareness of the other person, awareness of nature, awareness of yourself. It's all awareness. Okay,
yeah.
Being aware. So, it was like ChatGPT saying, look, the one that we cannot match, that we cannot surpass you guys is the ability to be aware. Okay?
Yeah.
So that also goes in the same direction. So
yeah, I think it supports everything that we've been talking about here, which just points to the importance of leaders taking the time to be self-aware and to notice that gap between themselves and their mind and their thoughts and their feelings and all of that stuff. And that's a very interesting answer. So Gerardo, before I let you go, is there anything else that you'd like to say or that I didn't ask you that you were hoping I would or anything like that?
No. You can ask me what you want.
Okay, cool. Well, so people can find you at gerardosegat.com. We'll put that in the show notes. And I really wish you all the best with your work. I think we're brothers from another mother working on the same thing from different angles. And I really, really appreciate you taking the time to talk with us today on livelikealeader.show.
Thank you, John, for inviting me. It was a pleasure.
Likewise. And to those of you listening, thank you for joining us. And if you like livelikealeader.show, please go give us a review on your favorite podcast app. Give us 5 stars and say a little bit about what you like. That would really help us reach more people. And I will look forward to seeing you next time on livelikealeader.show. Thanks. Thank you for joining the Speak Like a Leader podcast. Go be awesome.